Good afternoon and welcome to the Children and Family Affairs Subcommittee meeting for March the 4th, 2025. Thank you all for joining us today. And we're going to begin with a prayer by Representative Alexander. And we're going to stand and then please remain standing for the pledge.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and the opportunity we have to serve you and your children. May we do your will, Lord, in this committee. Open our eyes, open our minds, help us to do what you would have us to do. For it is in thy blessed and holy name. Yes, these things. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Members, have we all signed in? Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll? Members, would you please sign in? Did you push, present not voted? The blue button. There we go. Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Madam Chair, you have 7 members present. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Members, do we have any personal orders today? Representative Kiesling, you are recognized.
Thank you, Chair Lady. Of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize Angel Sexton. Angel, would you please stand with us? Angel is the Executive Director of our Children's Center over in Scott County. Thank you, Angel. Thank you, Chair Lady.
Thank you. We'll welcome her. Are there any other personal orders? I think I would like to take one and recognize our past representative, Eddie Smith. He's here today, I think, representing the CACs, but he's worked hard on that, and we miss him as a member, so let's welcome him back. Okay, some quick housekeeping. Number 4, House Bill 46 has been taken off notice and will be, and without objection, we're going to roll this to the special calendar to be published with the final calendar. And number 5, House Bill 315 by Representative Bolso has been taken off notice. Number 6 by Representative Littleton, House Bill 1357 has been taken off notice. So that takes us up to the regular calendar, which is number 1, House Bill 492 by Chairman Farmer. Properly motioned and seconded. Chairman Farmer, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members,
I believe I see an amendment as well.
yes, Madam Chair. It should be amendment 3777, 00377.
It's properly motioned and second. Are we ready to put it on the bill?
It rewrites the bill, members.
Okay, so we'll just add it on and then talk
That'd be
about it.
great.
Is that okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so all those in favor of adding Amendment 00377 to House Bill 492, say aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. You are recognized on House Bill 492 as amended.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, what this bill is designed to do, it's brought to me by the Tennessee Bar Association and the Family Law Executive Council, just so everyone knows. This bill has to do with grandparents' rights cases. And it's very simple. What this is allow for the court may award reasonable attorney's fees and other litigation expenses to either party in an action for grandparent visitation brought under this section 366306. So with that said, I'd be happy to answer any questions y'all may have. I think this is a good policy moving forward. Helping with grandparents' rights is something we've talked about ever since we've been elected. Madam Chair, we've talked about grandparents' rights. It has come up, and that's something I think we've moved forward from a policy standpoint as a body, and this would just help add to that.
Well, I personally want to thank you for bringing this. I've worked on this for a long time. In the past, we actually even did a summer study, but we just weren't in the right posture, I guess, as committees and as members, but I think we're there now. And being a grandparent, I really appreciate you bringing the bill. So thank you. Any other questions? Representative Towns, you're recognized.
Madam Chair, thank you. I too would like to get on the record thanking you for the bill. You know, grandparents are the ones that was a gate stopper for so many families around the country. You know, they tend to be smarter and better a lot of times. They really need to be in these kids' lives. And so this is really good that they have an opportunity without a lot of, roadblocks and so forth to be there so they can observe the kids and pass on the ways and teach the children and love the children and all the other good stuff. So thank you again for the bill. Appreciate it.
Thanks, sir.
Just turn myself off. Any other questions for Chairman Farmer? Are we ready to vote? Madam Clerk, please open the vote. Is there anyone that wants to change their vote? Madam Clerk, would you take the vote?
Madam Chair, you have 7 ayes.
Thank you. Your bill, House Bill 492 moves out to full judiciary.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank
Members.
you very much. Next, we have number 2 on the calendar, House Bill 347 by Chairman Hurt. Properly motion and second. You are recognized. I don't see an amendment. Is that correct?
Correct. Thank you, Madam Chair and Committee. House Bill 347 is our Poverty is Not Neglect bill. In Tennessee, over 17% of children and more than 1 in 5 children under 5 are living in poverty, a rate higher than both the national and regional averages. Meanwhile, the Department of Children's Services received over 70,000 reports of child abuse and neglect in 2022, but only 7.7% were substantiated. Of those, only 2.4% involved neglect. These staggering statistics highlight the need for clear legal guidelines to prevent unnecessary investigations, which not only strain resources, but also subject families to the trauma and shame of unfounded allegations. This legislation is codifying best practice, as we've seen in Texas. We aim to keep families safe and together by encouraging them to connect with resources. No family should fear losing their children for seeking the support they need. This legislation does not apply when, number one, abuse or neglect exists in addition to the conditions of poverty, and number two, when resources have been offered and refused. We want to encourage families to get the resources they need to lift them out of poverty, not scare them away. This bill also has clear exceptions that allow the department to intervene in cases where abuse or neglect exists, even if a family is experiencing poverty and if a parent has been offered resources and they refuse. That's why in 2021, Texas passed similar legislation in partnership with their Department of Children's Services to clarify that poverty is not neglect. And with that legislation in Texas, we've seen a positive outcome with the result of that bill. And Madam Chair, I believe there are parties that wish to testify and speak on this legislation. And with that, I'm open for questions also.
Are you asking for them to speak in
Yes, ma'am.
support? Okay,
Yes,
okay.
ma'am.
So we,
Sorry.
without objection, we will go out of session. And Nina Gurak, I'm not sure how we say that. If you would come forward and say your name and who you're with, please. And you have 3 minutes.
Hi there. My name is Nina Gurak. I work at Healthy and Free Tennessee, which is a project of Neo-Philanthropy. We work on a variety of family health and justice issues, and we are really excited to be working with Representative Hurt on this bill this year. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'd love to use my time to answer questions, but I just wanted to add a little bit to what Rep. Hurt shared around kind of the impetus for this bill. So we've been really inspired by the work of the Texas Public Policy Foundation out in Texas, obviously, and they have seen tremendous results from their bill that did a number of things to strengthen parental rights, but also address this poverty is not neglect issue. We took the language from them and worked with them to think through the different issues. And really, they've seen incredible results. They saw a 50% decrease in DCS cases just from that, the change in their neglect laws, as well as not only that, a 3-year decline in the child death rate. So culminating in the lowest rate they've seen ever recorded. So it's been really exciting to see what's happened there. We've been following that legislation since 2021 and wanted to bring this legislation here. So I'm happy to answer any questions yeah, thank you.
Thank you for being here. Do we have any questions for Ms.
Gurak, sorry.
Gurak? I think I said that right, I believe. So
I think,
are there any
yeah.
questions? Seeing none, I guess we really appreciate you being here. And
Wonderful.
thank you.
Thank you so much.
Mhm. Without objection, we'll go back. Oh, I'm sorry. DCS wanted to speak, I think. Who's? You may.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for being with us. I do have a question. You referenced Texas law. How did, in comparison of the language of this bill that's being presented versus what was passed in Texas, what is it very similar, or is there some changes that were made in that?
You're
Yeah.
recognized.
Thank you. Yes, it's very similar. They also use the language around financial hardship and again, just to clarify, it is solely due to financial hardship, not inclusive of harm that might happen outside of a parent's financial or caregiver's financial hardship. And they also kind of have that exceptions language around unless services have been offered and refused. And they have found that that has worked really well. They've not had any problems with that.
Recognized.
Thank you, ma'am. In Texas, what they use in code, I know it varies from state to state. There's terminology that we use in our Tennessee code annotated that may be different from other states, and definitions and things like that are different in other places. Does this language, was Texas very similar to what our language of our codes as we seek to add this into the Tennessee code? Is it going to cause any conflicts or anything like that with current statute, or can you speak to that?
Yeah, I don't believe it will. I'm curious if, happy to defer to legal if they would like to comment on it as well. But my understanding is, again, that this is just when the alleged harm is solely due to a parent or guardian's financial hardship, unless, reasonable material resources have been offered and refused. And that is consistent with what we saw in Texas and in Iowa. And again, they have had really spectacular results with them.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Now, if DC wants to come forward, I mean DCS. I'm thinking Dixie. If you would please state your name and who you're with, please.
Thank you, Chair Lady and committee members. My name is Jim Lehman. I'm the Legislative Director for the Department of Children's Services. The department does have a position of working with sponsor on House Bill 347. Was able to meet with the sponsor and express just some of our concerns. I think unintended consequences and concerns of the bill. We did share some amendatory language with him, but just weren't able to reach an agreement on, an amendment that we're comfortable with at this time. I hope that we are able to continue to work on it. I just think at this point in the language that we've seen, we do have concerns. Just very broadly speaking, I would say that the intent of the bill we have no issue with. We think that this notion of poverty is not neglect matches our policy and practice every day. So we are training our folks not to remove children due solely to poverty. We are training our folks to remove children when a child is in imminent risk of harm. So in order to keep children safe, right? And so we really appreciate the analysis being around the child and whether or not the child is in harm's way. We believe this bill unintentionally shifts the analysis to this financial circumstances around the child that could really, cause issues with us being able to keep children safe. And again, I don't believe it's an intention of the bill to allow children to remain in unsafe homes. I think it's really just something that's unintended. I would say I don't think the bill, if passed, would really change much about how we do investigations. I don't think it would change the number of calls we receive into the hotline every year, which is over 150,000. I don't think it would drastically change the number of investigations that we go out on, because again, we're already practicing this. If someone calls and says, well, my neighbor is poor, can you go investigate? I don't think we would not go out and investigate that. We have a very elaborate decision tree that our child abuse hotline utilizes when receiving in referrals to determine whether or not this is something that needs to be screened out or something that needs to be investigated and that kind of thing. I'd say also that, for every case that we have of a child in foster care, we have at least twice that many of non-custodial cases. So we're very fortunate that we get to work with a lot of families to provide resources to make sure that those children don't come into foster care. So we want to be able to keep doing that. We don't want to, this position that, hey, investigations should go down, meaning what, DCS should not go out there and find out what resources are needed to, keep that child safe in the home. I would say, to the Texas point, I am not an expert in Texas's law. I do know that I'm an attorney, and I know that our laws are very convoluted, and I don't think I'm wrong when I say that our laws are very unique to us. I do think it's certainly a risk that this committee runs of a square peg in a round hole type situation, especially when this bill changes the definition of abuse.
Your time is up.
Sorry, go ahead. Thank you. Excuse me. Thanks, Chair Lady.
I want to ask a question before we open it up to the other members. The first three things that a caseworker looks for when they go into a home, can you say what they are?
So do you want to talk about, talked about this with the chair lady recently, and now I'm blanking on what they are. I guess,
You're
did
right,
they have
just-
food in the home as well? Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Just state your name and who you're with, please, for the record.
Sammy Mayfair, Deputy General Counsel, Department of Children's Services. So typically we ascertain whether or not there's, one, is their home, is the home clean, environment clean? Is there food in their home? Are there adequate resources? Are there marks and bruises of their child? So we're looking and doing
And
a
are they dressed
holistic.
appropriately? I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh,
but-
But yes, a holistic assessment of the conditions of the child's living circumstances.
So I guess my other question is, would this add to or take away from that? Does this make it more tighter to make sure that poverty is not involved, or does it, what does it do for you?
How do I read? The real risk that we see with this is on the evidentiary and courtroom standpoint of attorneys relying on this, even though a child is unsafe or has been harmed, saying, well, I can still rely on this financial hardship exemption. Like I said, we don't think it will change a whole lot about how our investigators go out and do their jobs. We do think it could cause a judge to be, saying, well, we need to send this child back home because even though he or she is in harm's way, it's only due to some financial hardship, that kind of thing. So am I saying that right? Sam, would you elaborate?
Yes, and so, again, it's the language that we're concerned about, both on that, the litigation opportunities, if we do have to intervene in a child's life, and then also the permanency for that child, since it's modifying some of the termination of parental rights grounds as well, that over the last few years, this General Assembly has done a lot of work on making those strong to be able to find permanency for children, to be able to move children towards adoption when it is appropriate to do so. There are concerns that this may impact that. The language around reasonable resources being offered. Well, who makes the determination of what is reasonable under the circumstances? Material resources being offered. What resources are those going to be? And we just really think that it's appropriate to focus more on what is the child experiencing and whether or not it's safe for the child to be in that setting.
And if I may elaborate on that. So we as a department are offering resources and that kind of thing. I don't know if the resources we're offering would match exactly what's in the bill, but it's my understanding that this bill, could apply in private custodial situations as well. So one parent is alleging that another parent has committed abuse and that kind of thing. And it wouldn't really be appropriate to bring up whether or not resources were offered from that other parent. It's just kind of, again, like a square peg in a round hole, if I'm saying that right.
Chairman Doggett, you're recognized.
Thank you, ma'am. Could you repeat the three things that you look for when you go into the home?
So it's not three specific things, but the three things that, Chair Lady and we were discussing were around, is there food in the home? Is the home clean? Is it an appropriate living environment? Are there marks and bruises on the child? Are they clothed? So just, are those basic necessities being met within that home?
You're recognized.
Thank you. What is considered clean?
So there's not a one size fits all answer for that. It's going to depend on the assessment of that specific living environment. Usually when we're thinking of quote clean, it's what would actually present a health hazard. So we're not talking about necessarily, okay, you have a bunch of dirty dishes stacked up in your sink, so that's a reason for the department to say that your house is unclean. Maybe it's untidy, but untidy isn't unsafe. So when we're talking about unclean, we're talking about environments where there are dog feces throughout the house, where there's rodent infestations, where there's other environmental issues such as exposed wiring or holes, and it's all going to, again, depend on the age of the child, very case-specific factors to determine whether or not that is, quote, clean and appropriate in that circumstance.
Chairman Doggett.
Thank you.
Representative Towns, you're recognized.
Thank you. Everything that you all have disclosed as that you listed to that may take the child away, all still depends on money. Okay? People don't have food, that's money. Nobody in their right mind not going to have food in their refrigerator to feed their children if they have the money. Cleanliness, washing powders and soap. You know how much washing powders and soap cost today? All these things you all are talking about are resources. I think the priority ought to be to keep the family together. We'll take the child away and then give some money to somebody else to care for the child when the family could use the money that we've given to another person. And we know that the child is in dire straits because the family makes $7.25 an hour. You could have 3 of those jobs and not have enough money to raise one child. One child. That's $21.75 an hour, and you're still short. Poverty should never be a reason to extract children from their parents. I said it last week. Today, had it been when I was coming along, my mother used to make $1 something an hour. 10 children. How you gonna take care of 10 children? Like some other agency may say you should be able to take care of with that kind of money. You can't. You do the best you can. But it should be an indictment where people's children can be taken away from because they don't have the resources. So nobody want to live broke. Everybody wants to eat timely and eat healthy. Everyone does. So I'm going to always fall down on the side of taking care of children as best you can, keeping the families together, not having DCS or anybody or the government having too much of a reach and too much control over our children. The bill says that that's no excuse if you find that the child is being molested and there's some problem. The bill doesn't give an excuse for them to be taken away or eliminate the provision of the child being taken away if you find some other stuff. Okay, we have to go and be thorough, but we cannot. And unfortunately, people don't look at poor people in the best light. Okay, they're dumb. Okay, they're lazy. Okay, this kind of stuff we do with other human beings when they could just have somebody who died in the family, medical problem, or somebody who maybe got on drugs, or there could be some physical problem with somebody else in the family. The father got hurt and can't work. All these things are reality in our country, and not just in Tennessee. It's all over the place. So, but I'm hearing that we're looking for other stuff. You still, as an agency of the state and people that pay the bills, Tennesseans, we still gotta want to try to keep families whole. We got to want to keep families whole in this state. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Are there any other questions? Oh, Representative Harris.
Thank you, Chairwoman. And I of course, agree with my colleague, but when I read this language, it says, but does not include the failure to meet the needs of a child solely due to financial hardship. Question for you all. Do you all at any point remove children solely for financial hardship?
You're recognized.
Well, and thank you, Chair Lady. And what I was going to say sort of in response to Representative Towns is our analysis, our mission is children first. We are here to keep children safe. And that is why we would remove a child, is because we believe they are in harm's way. This shifts the focus to say, well, let's also think about financial conditions. And what we are focused on is whether or not we believe the child is in harm's way. And I totally agree with the points about keeping the families together. You know, we were very proud of the Relative Caregiver Program initiative that passed a couple of years ago, where we were able to provide payments to families of children that are not in foster care. And we're able to support those families to keep them from coming into foster care. We're, have fully implemented the Families First Prevention Services Act, which is federal legislation, which provides a lot of funds to states to ensure that families stay together. So would totally agree with those sentiments. Again, our mission is to keep children safe, and that's where our concern stems from.
You're recognized.
Yeah, I appreciate the response, but do you all at any point remove them just based off of financial hardship solely? Like, is that a thing, or is just?
That is not our common practice. And we obviously have a lot of cases, a lot of things happen statewide. I'm not going to say that there's never been an isolated case where that has happened, right? I don't want to sit here and say 0% never that has happened, because I don't think that would be transparent. That is not our practice. That is not what we have in our policies, that is a reason that we would remove a child. It's not, I mean, even currently under law, for us to be able to remove a child, we have to show imminent risk of harm to that child and that we made reasonable efforts to maintain that child in the home, or why that child cannot be safely maintained in the home. So it's not just that we walk in and the cabinet's empty, so we remove a child. It's what did we do to help resolve that issue? And if there's still an ongoing issue, then at that point, maybe when we're taking additional intervention. But I mean, it is not in our policy. It is not anywhere that we train or talk about that we remove children solely because of financial hardship.
And I would place the important caveat on that too, that we don't just have the sole authority. We can only remove children temporarily. Everything that we do goes before a court. You know, if we emergency remove a child, it's before a court within 72 hours. So these laws don't just affect, you know, what DCS does on investigations and that kind of thing. They are guideposts for the court to decide whether or not what we've done is correct. Because fortunately, we don't just have unilateral power to decide which children are and not safe. This is all things that very much affect fundamental parental rights. So they are all, you know, litigated in a court. So just wanted to add that.
You did?
And I'm a big
One
believer.
last question.
I'm a big believer that we really should only be removing children for when it's abuse or neglect. So I do believe that what the sponsor has provided in just saying that simply it does not include the failure to meet the needs of a child solely due to a financial hardship. I think that's a reasonable ask, especially if we are not truly removing children specifically for that one thing. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Representative Towns, did you have a question? Okay, all right. Without objection, we're going to go out of, I guess, we're going to talk to legal. Oh, that's right. So we're out of session. Could you give us the definition of criminal abuse in the bill, please?
Michelle Fogarty, Legal Services. So in statute, the criminal offense of child abuse and child neglect are the elements of are that any person who knowingly abuses or neglects a child under 18 years of age so as to adversely affect the child's health and welfare. In section 10 of the bill, it amends that statute to add a subsection that states abuse or neglect does not exist when the alleged harm is solely due to a parent or guardian's financial hardship, unless reasonable material resources such as cash assistance, safe and stable housing, or tangible goods have been offered to and refused by the parent or guardian. So if the way it's worded, if the person committing the abuse was not offered reasonable material resources, it could be interpreted as then they cannot be found guilty of the offense because they weren't offered them and didn't have the opportunity to take them. The way it's written, abuse or neglect does not exist unless reasonable resources were offered and refused. Excuse me.
Okay, thank you. You're recognized.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to say, I've shared with several members of the committee, you know, the intent of this bill is really those neglect cases. But this bill modifies our definition, not only in the criminal code, but in the Title 37 about abuse. And to us, those are two different things, I believe. You know, abuse is often associated with a physical injury or harm, something that you may be able to see. Well, neglect cases don't typically result in that kind of thing. This bill also modifies the definition of severe child abuse. Those two things I don't think are appropriate under this because they are different and apart from neglect, if that makes sense. Just wanted to add that.
Okay, are there any other questions? You're recognized. Oh, to the sponsor, okay. Well, if there's no other questions, we're going to go back into session. Representative Harris, you are recognized.
Thank you, Chair, and to the sponsor. You have a really good bill, I believe. I think that the change around the abuse piece of it is something I think a couple of us would at least want to see. Would you be willing to roll it a week to work on that amendment for that part, or?
You're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am willing to roll it a week and continue with the information that we just, understood. I do want to speak to, before I do that, if
You
the
may.
chair would allow
You
me,
may.
to a few things that were mentioned there. And, I would ask that the committee, as we move forward, and again, I'll commit to continuing to work with DCS. Their amendment that they initially brought basically removed the substance of the bill, which would have been no reason in our eyes or in my eyes to run the bill. With the concerns that were just brought up, absolutely want to find out, because our goal here is to help children. But I would also like to ask the committee, as we move forward, if these are best practices, we're just looking to codify them. To the concerns that DCS mentioned about the legal standpoint, there still has to be proof of abuse and neglect on that part of it. Again, trying to do what Texas has done, who has seen incredible improvements. I think we're on the right track. Maybe there's a little more tweaking that needs to occur. But I do appreciate the discussion, and Madam Chair, appreciate the opportunity to present it and start the discussion. But I am willing to roll it a week and continue working on it, see if we can address the concerns that were brought up.
Could you do one thing for us right now?
Yes, ma'am.
Tell us the difference in what we're doing right now in Tennessee and the one in Texas. I mean, do you know that we have removed people our children because of poverty itself? Am I not being loud enough? So just tell us the difference in your bill and the Texas bill
Thank you,
that
Madam
you've
Chair.
been talking about.
The way I understand it, there is no difference, that we're just trying to make sure that poverty is not neglect, not considered abuse.
Okay. Representative Towns, do you have a question? A question?
Comment to the sponsor, if you don't mind, please. We do model legislation in this country all the time. And I like the bill too, because and obviously, number one, we got to protect kids. We got to do that. Okay. But we can't vilify poverty as well. So I'm hoping that if there are any tweaks, that they're minor tweaks, and we bring it back and we try to do it. And then after the fact, if we pass the bill, we're going to monitor and see what happens in terms of decreases of activity. Anyway, we need to look at it and make sure. But I feel really good about it. I think we both win. I think, DCS is not going to be constricted, hands tied, and children are going to be able to stay with the parents. So it sounds like a deal where both of us can win as it relates to doing something good for Tennessee's children. Okay, thank you for the bill.
Was that a question, Representative
No,
Towns?
just a comment only. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Chairman Doggett, you're recognized.
Thank you, ma'am. Sponsor, you and I think we've had this conversation before, but I've had it with numerous folks. I've got a particular interest in your bill because of constituency that have reached out to me over the last 6 years about issues that they've had when they've had DCS show up at their homes because there was a complaint made that, for lack of better terms, maybe their living conditions were not the best, and they were concerned for the child or children that were in the home, and they go through, and it's a very invasive process. I mean, going through the house, and I've been there when I was in law enforcement and would accompany workers there on those, when they would do those home visits and walk through the homes with those and doing these investigations or whatever, they're called, and they go through and just had a constituent. It was the main complaint was that their bathroom was disgusting, and they get in there and it was just the grout was dirty, and I don't know how to clean grout. I've watched YouTube videos. I can't figure it out. There might be somebody in this room that can give me a tip on that, but I've got 4 kids, and anyway, I mean, it just stuff like that. And I mean, and these people are they're in a panic because they feel like they're doing the best they can. It's all they got. They don't have much, but it's all they got. And they're in a panic because they feel as if they're going to be drugged before a judge and their children are going to be taken from them. And I mean, the kids, they don't have anything, but they're happy and the family's happy. And so that's what's got a particular interest to me in this, because I know not everybody lives the same wherever you're at. But the main thing is that families ought to be able to feel that they can be comfortable in their skin, in their homes, whether it's a $2 million mansion or a $20,000 house trailer, whatever it is they're living in. They're doing the best they can. So I'm interested in working with you to see what this amendment looks like when you come back. So thank you for bringing the bill.
Representative Alexander.
Thank you. Thank you, sponsor. There's two sides to everything. I hear what my friend here is saying. And at the same time, I know I have a cousin who took a foster child in, with 10 kids in the home. 1-year-old was eating its own feces because they were so hungry. DCS also has the job to go out and look at these situations, because what if a child is being neglected? What if? This is a very difficult subject. And I'm just saying, I'm glad that we're going to work on it, because I think it's very important that we get to the right decision, because our interest here is only for the child. That's what we care about. And maybe it is to stay in that home. But this home had dog feces and everything on the floor, and 2-year-old running through it. And there's no excuse for uncleanliness. I'm sorry. Yeah, grout. Yeah, I get it. You probably can find some dirty grout in my house, but that's filth. There's a huge difference. But we can't, DCS can't sit by with concerns and complaints and not check them out. Because what if there is a child being abused or neglected? We don't want that. So I thank you for being willing to work on this bill. And I thank DCS for being willing to work on it too. There's always two sides to everything. Nothing is ever black and white. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? I feel the same way. I'm glad you're going to work on it together. No one wants a child taken because of poverty. We just want to make sure that they are in a safe environment and they are fed properly. And I think we all work towards that, including DCS. And, sometimes reports are different, but I do know that I read a lot of reports, and they all say that, if they're dressed properly and there's food in the house and there's no bruising, then they have to look for more abuse. So they don't just take the child for anything. But I'm not at every case, and I haven't read all of them. I'm far from perfect. So I think we're on the right track, I guess is what I'm trying to say, because we're all here to make sure that not just the children, but all the families are safe and taken care of. So are you asking for a roll for the 1 week? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Without objection, you rolled 1 week.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Committee.
So next is number 3, House Bill 641 by Chairman Carringer. Properly motioned and second, you are recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to present House Bill 641. This legislation addresses a 25-year funding shortfall for Tennessee's 32 accredited child advocacy centers, which provide essential services for children facing abuse and neglect. And Chair Lady, we have someone who is a victim who would like to speak, and she has a meeting with the governor here in a few minutes. So could we go out of session and let her speak, and then we can go back and
while we're
discuss it?
Yeah, we will. And while we're out of session, we'll just take up the other ones that are in favor and opposition. Then you can come back up. Are you okay with that?
Sounds great.
All right.
I'm great.
So without objection, we are out of session. So if you all three could just come up, and the lady that needs to speak first, please state your name and who you're with, please. So I know we have Eddie, and then we do have Ken Bender that wanted to speak. No? Okay. So you are recognized.
Okay, I'm Riley King, and I'm here with Child Help. Yes. So, hello everyone. been sent a video earlier today. You may have or may not have watched it, but that is just a small glimpse of a true story, my story. I would first like to ask that you bear with me through this speech as I attempt to not get too emotional. I have cried watching the extended version of that video every time I've watched it since it was created because as an adult now, I feel for that little girl. She prayed every night that the abuse would end, that the last time would be the last time. It was never the last time. She had to make it the last time. Every attempt at hiding from him, running away from him, and fighting back had failed her. Finally, at the age of 16, she realized that her silence was only benefiting her abuser. I am no longer talking to you as that hurt little girl, but for her, and for all the other boys and girls of all ages going through similar circumstances who could not be here today. For those who did not survive to tell their story, and for those actively fighting and hoping to be saved. My abuser has been behind bars for 3 years now and will remain there until he takes his last breath. I am lucky to have my success story and resources like Child Help available to me. I am now graduated from the University of Tennessee and am pursuing a career in healthcare that I am passionate about. Something I had never dreamed would be possible when I was living in active abuse. When I sat down for my forensic interview at Child Help, I remember being told to just tell the truth in as much detail as possible. After holding a secret like that inside for so long, it can feel unsafe and wrong to talk about it out loud. It is so daunting as a child to tell a stranger about the horrific things that have happened to you when you have been taught and manipulated for your entire life to never speak on it. However, as the interviewer began to ask questions and I began to answer, my fear slowly faded. This was the first time that I was able to share my complete story, and it was a blessing to have such a warm and caring environment to do it in. The interviewer spoke to me at an age-appropriate level and used the same language and terminology that I did to reiterate and clarify details about my story. Child Help gave me a space to talk about what happened to me without judgment and was there for me in a time where I did not know what direction to go in. They provided me with therapy resources, and the interview they conducted was an integral part of my court trial that came 3 years later. Child Help and the other CICs in Tennessee have made such a strong impact on the survivors of child abuse. They are a crucial component of making it to the other side, and they continue to inspire me through their relentless efforts to advocate for children who have been abused. Thank you.
Well, you are a very strong young lady, and thank you for being here today. And it's hard to tell those stories, and I understand that. And to see that you've become a beautiful, smart, strong woman is amazing. So thank you for being here with us today and for telling us your story. Are there any other questions for Representative Alexander? You recognize?
I just wanted to say thank you. You were brave at 16 and you're brave now. So proud of you. And we wish you all the future success in the world, and may all these nightmares that you've had all your life go away. Thank you very much.
Representative Towns.
No, same here. Life it's a really strange journey for many of us in the world. But fortunately for us, especially those that have found and been taught about the creator of the universe, there's always hope. And to look at you, we'd never know. Okay, you're doing well. We know you're going to continue to go forth and make us proud. Okay, and have you graduated, or you out of UT now?
I am. I begin physician assistant school in September.
This coming September?
Yes.
Congratulations. Take advantage of this group if you can, and your representative you have out there in the future, because we want to see you do well. Okay, keep your chin up. We already know you're a fighter. Just keep your chin up. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions, remarks for her? Thank you so much, and scurry on off to see the
Thank
governor.
you.
So thank you for being here. Would you speak your name and who you're with, please.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Chair Lady Littleton and members of the Children and Family Affairs Subcommittee. My name is Eddie Smith, and I am the Director of Organizational Advancement for Child Help. We are a 66-year-old nonprofit that has been working to eradicate child abuse and neglect nationwide since 1959. But we're not here alone. Behind me, and I'm going to ask them to stand right now, are members from child advocacy centers all over the state that are here asking for your help in supporting the funding that we're going to be talking about today. So I'm just going to ask everybody from a CAC, if you would, just stand and let's see that we are 32 centers across the state serving
Thank you all for being here.
over 32,000 children. Now, we've had to punt a little bit on what we were going to originally do. So, I want to be able just to talk about some of the things that are in the packet. And we dropped the packet off at each of your offices earlier today, just around the funding. I want to take you back for a second. How many of you all remember 25 years ago what price of eggs cost? 92 cents, about $10 a dozen now. Gallon of gas was $1.22. A gallon of milk was $2.77. We don't live in 25 years ago. However, for all of our funding for child advocacy centers, we're still stuck in 1999. In 2001, there were 14 CACs serving a little over 2,500 kids with severe abuse. Today, there are 32 of us serving 32,000 kids. Our price per kid has gone from $382 to $111 per child that we're able. And it's not just forensic interviews. It's victim advocacy services. It's mental health services. It is medical exams. It is everything that wraps around inside of each of our centers to ensure that that child is not bounced around from place to place, that all of those services are brought to bear for kids like Riley, for kids like Sabeti, who is here with us that had to go to the governor's office, and the 32,000 other kids in the state that are do not have a voice sitting here in front of you today. So what you've got before you is what we did was we took and looked at the state funding and DCS funding, averaged it out. When it went up, it went up. When the state budget went down and DCS dropped, that's in your packet. And the funding in there at $127,000 for the CACs would be a 3%, 75% of the 4% average of DCS over the last 25 years if our funding had kept pace, and the same for the forensic interviewers. So we are asking for your help in just passing this on. We know that the department has some philosophical issues around the fiscal note. We're continuing to address that, working with Chairman Watson on the Senate side, Chairman Hicks in Finance, and really just want to set the stage for what we're asking for and why it is so important. Because, DCS, a lot of people want to pick on them. You hear a lot of news in the story about picking on, that DCS is doing this wrong and doing this wrong. Jim said it just a second ago, over 150,000 cases.
Your 3 minutes are up. I'm sorry.
You should have given me a little more.
Actually, we did. So.
No, thank you very much.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Smith? Chairman Doggett, you're recognized.
Thank you. Will you finish what you were saying right there, please?
Thank you. DCS gets blamed for a lot, but they have over 100, it's actually, I think last year, 167,000 cases of abuse and neglect come through the hotline. They have a tremendous burden to investigate all of those, and we are a partner in that. I refer to child advocacy centers as the tip of the spear in the entire investigative process. Before we existed, DCS would have to take that child to their office. They might have to take them over to the police station, then to the DA's office, over to the hospital. That child would have to recant their story 4 times. At the centers, it's done once. It is video and audio recorded to aid the DA's office in the prosecution of crimes against children. And DCS is an incredible partner in that. So we don't want to sit here and say that they're an adversary. They are a partner, and we love DCS and what they do. And when Commissioner Quinn came before you all in the General Assembly a few years ago, asking for money to help fill the 600 vacancies they had, we were there cheering it on. So today, we're now asking you to help us in this funding that we're seeking. Now I'm done.
There you go. Well, thank you very much. Any other questions for Mr. Smith? Representative Harris, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. And I'm looking at it where it says 85,000 per contracted interviewer.
Yes.
How many interviewers do you all have?
So there are 34 contracts statewide for all child advocacy centers. I believe there's another 20 forensic interviews that are not funded currently. Those have been funded through VOCA and some other. So what we're seeking is for that 34,000. Currently, the FI contracts only pay for salaries. Within this 85,000, it would allow us to pay for salaries, also the overhead, things like general liability, the abuse and molestation. Most centers are seeing about a 300% increase in insurance because of just what's going on in the country. So it's getting more and more expensive to try and even just operate. So within that 85,000 would cover everything around that forensic interviewer.
Representative Harris.
Thank you, Chair. And then in the 127, 855.98, what is that one?
So that is the base CAC contract. I can't speak for every center. I know I've spoken with the Carl Perkins Center. Ours, each advocacy center of midsize is about $850 to $1 million in operating costs. So DCS currently has been funding 52,000 of those base operating costs. We've had to find the money elsewhere. And all of our centers were actually suffering a deficit. This General Assembly, and as you'll see in the whereases in the bill, in the 112th and the 113th, gave one-time money to our state chapter to dole out to centers to help fix some of that shortfall. $5 million in the 112th General Assembly and $7.5 million in the 113th. That first round of funding ends in 4 months. So right off the bat, every center is facing a $90,000 budget deficit. A year from now, we're facing about another $150,000 budget deficit if we don't fix the funding at this right here.
One more. Yes.
And currently, do you all go through the budgeting process like everyone else, or it'll be different if this passes?
So every center gets a 5-year contract. We're only allowed to approach you all once every 5 years because the state constitution bars the General Assembly from adjusting any contract once it's enacted. All of our contracts are actually up for renewal July 1st of this year, which is why we're here today asking for you all to fix the base amount and then look at the increase that could go on, because this is the one chance every 5 years that the General Assembly gets a chance to actually affect that without appropriating money through another avenue to get to us.
Great.
Representative Alexander.
Thank you, and thank you for thank you for being here. I just want to say I know my Child Advocacy Center in East Tennessee works on a shoestring, and what they do is so important because a case can't be prosecuted without a forensic interview, and you all do all of those. So,
Representative Harris, could you be still, please? She can't see. Thank you, Representative Harris.
I hope that the audience is not drunk by what I just put you through. But anyway, I just want to say thank you to all of you for what you do. It's vital. It's very important. Thank you.
Any other questions from the members? I have just one question, and I say this because I think it's very important for the centers to be out in the public so that people understand what they do and who they are and be more likely to actually donate money. But do all of them have fundraisers out in the community?
So
and I say that because I think it's so important that the community know who they are and what they do.
So to my understanding, and I don't know if Stephen's in the room, he can whisper in my ear, but I believe every center actually does fundraising. I know the Carl Perkins Center actually had 2 big fundraising events. We do a couple. I know Chattanooga does, the Nashville. So I believe they all do fundraising events. But our center, some of them are in the more urban areas where it's easier to get, especially corporate sponsorships. And some of our centers are in extremely rural areas. We're fortunate in Knoxville that we serve the 6th judicial district, which is only 1 county. Some of our centers serve 3 and 4 and 5 counties, and they have satellite offices because you don't want to have to drive a child 5 counties over for a forensic interview. So we've taken on the extra burden without any funding to open up satellite offices so that child has a much closer center to go to. And then the forensic interviewers, I know at Carl Perkins, those forensic interviewers travel to where the child is rather than having the child travel to where they are.
think it's very important that they're out in the community. I believe that.
Yes, ma'am.
I used to see the little wheel things with the little child on it, and that brought everyone's attention. But, I think it's real important that the communities know too, and know what they're supporting and why they're supporting it. So are there any other comments or questions for Mr. Smith? Seeing none.
If I could add one thing,
Yes, you're recognized.
because you brought it up. April 1st is actually when Child Abuse Prevention
Mm-hmm.
Month starts. So, throughout the month, please grab a pinwheel, put it out, post things on social media, because we lose in this country every single day 5 children to abuse and neglect. That would be the equivalent of, at the end of this month, a plane taking off from BNA Airport with 150 kids, it crashing. We shrug our shoulders and go on to the next month, and it happens again and again and again. We lose 5 children every single day to this epidemic.
Thank you for being here. So I think DCS wanted to speak as well. If y'all would come forward and state your name and who you're with, please.
Thank you, Chair Lady and committee members. My name is Jim Lehman. I'm the Legislative Director for the Department of Children's Services, and I am in the unenviable position of telling you how the department is opposed to this bill as I sit in front of our partners from across the state from child advocacy centers. Certainly very much appreciate the child advocacy centers. Have no opposition to increased funding for those centers. We're very encouraged to see that there was increased funding included in the governor's proposed budget, about $1 million or so for different buckets for the child advocacy centers. Unfortunately, the opposition in this case, it's a philosophical opposition and a fiscal one. There's about a $4.2 million fiscal note that's not included in the governor's budget. The opposition only comes from the automatic increase part of the bill. It says that for every increase we get to our Child Protective Services budget, CACs would see a similar 75% increase. The two aren't necessarily directly related to each other. There's some correlation there, but it just ties the hands of future administrations and future legislatures. Every time we would need to come to the Finance Committee and ask for a $10 million increase, this bill would turn that into a $17.5 million increase, making it, just much more difficult for us to seek additional funding for CPS. But again, no opposition to the child advocacy centers. Very much appreciate them, value the relationship we have there. But that is our position on the bill.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, I guess we will go back into session. Thank you all very much. So without objection, we are back in session. Representative Carrington, you are recognized to finish your statements.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, committee. So, thank you to all of y'all who've been here today. I go back, obviously, Eddie Smith and I have been friends for many, many years because we live in the same area and I've watched his beautiful wife grow up. But that's not how I came to be involved in child help in Knoxville. I was involved in child help many, many, many years ago. And one of the reasons and how I got involved was our district attorney, Sharma Allen. That is child help and what she worked on for years with child abuse case and all is essentially why she ran to be our district DA attorney there in Knox County. And so I've been involved for years, so I just wanted to let that know that I've had a passion for what child help it does before I ever came here as a state rep. And just a little bit now, I mean, CACs are legally mandated and work alongside DCS, law enforcement, our DAs to provide forensic interviews, victim advocacy, medical examiners, mental health therapy, and child abuse prevention. However, as you all have heard, the funding for CACs has not been adjusted in 25 years, despite rising costs and increases in demand, and just all of us, just from our own personal lives of how things have increased. And so to answer Jim's statement from DCS in terms of about the cost and all. The same language for the 75% is the exact same mechanism in which we, the legislature, have chosen to fund the public defenders. And so for every time the DAs get an increase, there is a 75% automatic match for our public defenders. So I think we should ensure that the centers providing forensic interviews, victim advocacy, medical exams, and all for child abuse is that we also fund them for the future. That is of the same level there. So to just kind of sum up this bill, and it's like failure now means that CAC contracts cannot be amended for another 5 years, making 30 years without meaningful funding increases. This bill ensures centers can continue protecting Tennessee's most valuable, vulnerable children. And I respectfully ask for your support and a favorable vote, and happy to maybe take some questions. If I don't, I've got all these people behind me to hopefully can answer your questions. So thank you all.
Members, do we have any questions for the sponsor of the bill? Motion, previous question's been called. Without objection, I guess we are ready to vote. Madam Clerk, would you open the vote, please? Would you please take the vote, Madam?
Madam Chair, you have 6 ayes, 0 nays, and 1 present not voting.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So that is the end of our, oh, that's right. Okay, without objection, House Bill, I've lost my place now. House Bill 641 by Representative Carringer passes and moves out to Judiciary full.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, committee.
So without objection, we are adjourned.